Hi, my name is Alriz Benson, and my thesis is an analysis of caffeine use, perceived stress, and sleep quality amongst undergraduate nursing students. So, caffeine consumption has been a prevalent way for many people, especially college students, to compensate for their lack of sleep or energy throughout the day. And whether it's nursing students or registered nurses, the nursing profession is a profession that's acknowledged as a career that challenges one's sleep schedule and it inflicts inevitable stress on one's life. So there's research that confirms that there's a lack of knowledge among college students about caffeine consumption's relationship with sleep and perceived stress. So that is one reason why I wanted to measure these variables in this. Another reason for this study to be conducted is to urge that nursing students must recognize and potentially prepare for this impending stress. And the results of the study would substantiate whether or not students should improve their sleep patterns and caffeine consumption in order to reduce stress. And in turn, this could potentially address uh, the students' sleep problems, improve academic achievements, and maintain an overall healthy lifestyle.
So, therefore, my research question is what is the relationship between the use of caffeine, sleep quality, and perceived stress among undergraduate nursing students? So, my whole thought process behind this was that when people don't get an adequate amount of sleep, they seemingly consume more amounts of caffeine to stay awake. And in turn, their perceived stress would increase. So, therefore, my hypothesis is the consumption of caffeine will have a negative correlation with sleep quality and a positive correlation with perceived stress.
So, for my literature review, it includes studies that utilize tools that I chose to be my operational definitions of my variables. So, Petit and DeBar in 2011 conducted a study using the perceived stress scale, and they found positive correlations exist between participants' energy drink consumption and perceived stress. Ferris and colleagues in 2017 used the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, and they found a significant correlation exists between energy drink consumption and sleep quality. Bueller, Lakenmeyer, and Schlegel in 2013 developed a caffeine assessment tool, and they developed this to address the fastest growing consumer group of caffeine in the last 30 years, being children and adolescents. So this is the perceived stress scale. It asks questions about feelings and thoughts during the last month, and the score ranged from 0 to 40, where 21, a score of 21 and over indicates a very high health concern. This is the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, and it asks questions about sleeping habits in the past month, and scores range from 0 to 21, where a score of 5 or more indicates a poor sleep quality, and the higher the score, the worse the quality of sleep that they're getting. This is the caffeine assessment tool. It requires the participant to tally the amount of caffeine that was consumed in the past 24 hours based on the portion sizes that are indicated above and the wide variety of caffeine products from coffee to iced tea to even chocolate.
So, for my methods, I used a quantitative non experimental correlational design based on Lazarus and Folkman's transactional theory of stress and coping. And they define perceived stress as a condition or feeling experienced when a person perceives that the demands exceed the personal and social resources the individual is able to mobilize. So I used that definition as a conceptual definition for perceived stress. My sampling was a non probability convenience sampling in a population of undergraduate college nursing students. I obtained IRB approval last year in October, and I obtained passive consent through students completing the survey that consisted of questions and assessments that were adopted from the tools that I mentioned earlier. And I distributed this survey in classrooms around campus in the beginning of class with the professor's permission.
So my data analysis, since I have two dependent variables, I will focus on two regressions. One showing correlation solely between caffeine consumption and perceived stress, and the other showing correlations solely between caffeine consumption and sleep quality. I will be inputting all of this data into SPSS, and I will use inferential statistics um, if the findings show that a statistical generalizable inference can be made. And I will also use descriptive statistics showing measurements of central tendency to reveal simple correlation.
As for my results, I had 159 surveys that I collected, and through the omission of some surveys based on not meeting the inclusion criteria, the sample size became 138. So, first, I will be focusing on the measurements of central tendency and then move on to my regressions. So, for caffeine consumption, the average caffeine consumption in the total sample was 98 milligrams per day. And here it shows the average caffeine consumption in each UDC level, with UDC 1 being the highest average caffeine consumed per day, being 110 milligrams. So for the perceived stress scale scores, the average PSS score in the total population was 21.3, uh, where UDC2 had the highest PSS average PSS score, being 21.8. So it's important to note that a score of 21 and higher indicates a very high health concern. Sorry about my dog. So the average William Patterson nursing student reports a score that indicates a very high health concern. So for the PSQI scores, the average PSQI score in the total population was 7, where UDC2 again has the highest average PSQI score being 7.4. So at this point, the results show the average nursing student has a poor sleep quality and has stress that poses a very high health concern. So for my regressions, this is the caffeine consumption and perceived stress scale scores. Between these two scores, I found no correlation where R or the Pearson R value was 0.065. So this means that that caffeine consumption and perceived stress had no correlation in this study. And I have a potential reason why this could be the case later in my limitations.
So with the caffeine consumption and PSQI scores, I found a very weak positive correlation between them, um, where the Pearson R value was 0.179 and the p-value was less than 0.05. So in this case, regarding the tools, the PSQI score, for the PSQI score, the higher the score, the worse the quality of sleep that they're getting. So if there's a positive correlation between caffeine consumption and PSQI scores, which there is, it technically indicates a negative correlation between the two variables. So this means that caffeine consumption and perceived stress had a minimal negative correlation in this study.
So I ran another regression between my two dependent variables, which was not part of my hypothesis, but I thought it would be interesting to still measure these two variables against each other. And I found a moderately positive correlation between the two, where R equaled the Pearson R value equaled 0.376 and the p value was less than 0.05. So, like before, the higher the PSQI score, the lower quality of sleep that they're getting. So, this technically means that perceived stress and sleep quality had a moderately negative correlation in this study. So, this result confirms that the average William Patterson nursing student experiences poorer sleep quality as their perceived stress increases. So, for my discussion, results of my study minimally support my hypothesis, where caffeine consumption does have a slightly negative correlation with sleep quality, meaning the more caffeine they consume correlates with the less quality of sleep that they're getting. Regarding my theoretical framework, um, this research supports the definition of perceived stress from the theory of stress and coping, and it confirmed its reliability by producing significant results and ruled out other objective means by which one can measure stress. So, in other words, stress is better to be measured subjectively rather than objectively. Regarding the literature, my research was consistent with Ferris and colleagues' study in 2017, where they found that a significant correlation exists between caffeine consumption and sleep quality, but it was inconsistent with Petit and DeBar's study in 2011, where they found a significant correlation exists between caffeine consumption and perceived stress. And it was inconsistent with this potentially because of one of my tools, which I will get in my limitations. So, other than self-reported data and sample size, my limitations also included my tool, my caffeine consumption tool, which only measured caffeine that was consumed in the past 24 hours, whereas the tool that they used in Petit and DeBar study um, that measured caffeine consumption in the past 30 days. So perhaps the time period in which the participants were required to report caffeine consumption significantly affected the results. In conclusion, since I ran a regression on my two dependent variables that were significantly correlated but weren't necessarily part of my hypothesis, future research could be geared towards exploring different variables and coping strategies related to perceived stress and sleep quality. And although my results of the study confirmed the seemingly obvious, where consuming more caffeine or having more stress will obviously affect your sleep quality, it's important to acknowledge the statistically significant data that it produced and that it substantiates the need for nursing students to improve their sleep patterns and caffeine consumption in order to reduce stress. And in turn, this could potentially improve their health status, address underlying sleep problems, improve academic achievements, and maintain an overall healthy lifestyle.
And these are my references. Thank you very much for listening, and I would like to take this opportunity to also congratulate my peers for completing their undergraduate research. Um, I would particularly like to thank Dr. Nocella for advising me for the past 4 years and helping me accomplish something that I am very proud of. I appreciate everything you've done to help me succeed in nursing school, so thank you. And I would also like to thank Honors for still giving us this opportunity to present our research. So thank you very much for watching.